Everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the closing session of our drone mapping and geospatial analysis participatory unmanned aerial systems approach training course. Now, this training course was conducted over the last 12 weeks, and there were a number of areas covered. But before I go any further, I want to first apologize for the delay in our start. And I would also like to have a brief word of prayer before we go into our welcome session.
Okay, let us pray. Father God, thank you for your gracious mercies. Thank you for bringing us here today safely. Thank you for each and everyone who would have contributed to this training session. Thank you for the participants. Thank you for all the support structures that were put in place. Thank you for the FAO, Ministry of Agriculture, and all persons that were involved. Father, we pray that everything that was learned throughout this training course will be put into practice, not only for the benefit of our departments, but for our country on a whole. We thank you once more for your gracious mercies. We pray that this ending session, will go smoothly as planned. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Glenn. So I'll dive straight into our welcomes and introductions. So this project was conceptualized at we in the Ministry of Agriculture saw the need for the improvement of how we do our data capturing. So in our approach to the FAO, they did this proposal where we looked at the use of unmanned aerial systems for data capturing and disaster management. Now we have to say special thanks to our FAO colleagues, Risa, Roberto. They've done quite a bit of work in terms of ensuring that the funding was secured. We would also like to say thanks to the local disaster risk management team of FAO, who would have coordinated a lot of our workshop activities. So given that we are already on a time crunch, I would like for us to delve straight into our presentations. So our first presentation starts with Dr. Kim Baldwin, who was the course director, and she's going to give us a brief training overview of the project, the lessons learned, and some of the accomplishments. Kim?
Right. Can everybody hear me? Good morning. Everything's good? I'm assuming. I just want to make sure the mic switch happened. Yes? No? Can somebody? Yeah, you can hear me? It's good. I can start?
Yes, we're hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any, I'm not just talking. All right. So good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Kim Baldwin, and I was the consultant that has been leading the team for the last 3 months, working with FAO on this really exciting project. This is a project that I actually have developed during the pandemic. And I executed it last year in Dominica and St. Lucia for the Ministry of Agriculture's and setting up commercial drone units, similar as what the exercise we did here in Saint Vincent. I would have to say, though, that this class and this course has been greatly improved in the last year, and I'm really excited today to share with you the concept, the project, and then let the team share the results. And then we will, as Karomo just mentioned, we will discuss next steps, recommendations, and where the team is going to go from here. So again, for time, I'm just going to go through these a little quicker than I normally would, but I believe everybody in the room should be aware that drones really are revolutionizing environmental management in general. They allow us to very easily and cost effectively collect geospatial data and map areas in ways that were previously inaccessible or many times not even safe to get into. So really what excites me is that when we pair the drone technology as a platform to collect this data and use it with spatial analysis software, it really can allow us to capture real-time information to support informed decision-making. And I've really worked hard over the last 6-7 years working with drone technology and GIS for 15 years before that to develop a methodology and come up and identify solutions that are effective in the Caribbean. And so as we all know in this room, working in the Caribbean is not an easy environment. There is a lot of challenges in terms of resources, let's say, and technical capacity, but also in terms of data and the environment. The environment working in Saint Vincent, working in the Caribbean is some of the roughest in the world. And so the fact that this type of training and the results you're going to see is possible on a pretty limited budget in a matter of 3 months is mind-blowing in my opinion, but I'm a little biased. So agricultural disaster risk management applications. Overall, there's many ways. Agriculture and construction are the largest industries in the world to use drone mapping and monitoring technologies. So the fact that we can not just create base maps, but 3D models, we're able to very quickly, like I said, in generally real time, collect planning information in terms of data on the land, the contours, 3D elevation. We're able to use sensors on the drones to use AI and machine learning to automatically understand parameters about the fields, the crops, diseases, pests. And also by having this type of information, we're able to map socioeconomic information about livelihoods, about the people using the resources. And again, once we have this in spatial form, we can bring it into GIS and more serious analysis platforms to do flood mapping, modeling, identifying changes over time, and really monitoring and measuring management effectiveness, as well as testing, research in terms of trials and development. So it's really an exciting world, drone technology, especially in the agricultural. So I'm going to be saying agricultural in this presentation, but in this project, agricultural meant fisheries, forestry, and traditional agricultural planning and development. So the subject matter of this drone mapping application and geospatial analysis training was really using a participatory approach for disaster risk management in the country. That is the underlying application. As our team knows very well, I'm all about understanding your application and uses so that you can come up with the most cost-effective and efficient solution and data. So how is it being used for risk management? There's many ways in this class and in this project that we learned about using drones for pre and post disaster preparedness, understanding vulnerability modeling, as well as mapping impacts, mitigation, infrastructure, response and disaster planning, as well as using drone technology and geospatial mapping for improving food security, climate smart design, as well as understanding livelihoods and impacts and resilience efforts. So disaster risk management, the crux of it really is that we need to understand or be able to spatially map hazards, exposures, and vulnerability in order to build that resilience before and after disasters. And so the approach that this project used was by using a participatory, collaborative, comprehensive approach by integrating drone data, GIS, and local knowledge of the resource users on the ground, but also the local knowledge within this country, within all the government agencies to help us work together to make more integrated, better decisions. And so over the last 3 months, the class has been working and probably has done more advanced GIS work than many of my GIS students at the University of the West Indies. We had an intensive 3 months where we really dove into the basics of spatial analysis, understanding clearly. Teaching GIS for so many years, if you don't get this, you don't get GIS. And so I feel very confident that this class understands the questioning process, how to define a problem and develop the list of criteria and data needed to conduct analysis to make good informed decisions. So we applied the traditional GIS approach, but what my PhD is in and what I'm very passionate about is a participatory, user-centered, demand-driven approach. So we applied that for agricultural disaster risk mapping and monitoring in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. And we carefully considered the 5 components of a GIS, which are listed there. But we worked through as a team, step by step, building over the 12 weeks this capacity to understand the purpose of your analysis, the benefits of creating and collecting the data, the audience, and our informational needs for various stakeholders. The team learned how to plan for spatial data collection and corresponding drone flight surveys. We learned all different types of surveys, which they are going to teach you about in a moment. And we determined how to use that drone data to create geospatial data. So we looked at the drone maps, we figured out what are the mapping features, the different layers or data sets that we were going to extract off those maps, and determine the appropriate ecosystem or site extent. Because many times you might be looking, let's say, at a farm, but you need to understand the ecosystem around to understand the impacts or the vulnerability in the area. And then the team worked through with me and we learned how to assess, create, and analyze our data. Quality data, as the team knows, is central to an effective information system. So really understanding and how to analyze our quality assurance, quality control, metadata, naming conventions, data management, and analyzing the data was also a huge part of this class, probably the second half of the class. And then we also worked on how do we integrate this data with existing information in the country? How do we share this out in multiple ways, which you're going to see all in this presentation. So the objectives of this FAO project were threefold. The first was to provide comprehensive training in commercial drone operations and flight safety, as well as data collection and management techniques in order to implement a drone unit for the ministry. As part of this, a drone UAS policy and operations manual has been developed for the country and was applied and learned throughout the course of the 12 weeks. We also went out and we have demonstrated the applicability of drone mapping and geospatial tools for disaster risk management within the country at several sites, at an agricultural site, a coastal marine site, as well as forestry site. And we applied this participatory approach throughout that entire process in order to create useful geospatial data and create baseline agricultural disaster risk management products and maps for these sites. So as I mentioned, it was a 12-week training. This was delivered in a blended approach, which means it had in-person and online components. I have an online training academy in which the participants, the pilots, and the analysts were enrolled in specific courses. So this comprised of 20 people taking the class. We had 8 drone pilots and 12 data analysts. Why 12 data analysts? Because as I just said, data can comprise up to 80% of the work of a GIS project. So really having people on board to be able to do quality control, review, and also create spatial data is a much needed component to the team. So the team has been guided, as I mentioned, in a blended fashion. So they were enrolled in an online academy, which had access to all of the lessons, resources, Zoom recordings, every single moment of fun that we've had in the last 12 weeks. This was a very full-time class. The pilots were with me 3 full days a week, and the analysts were with me 2 days a week. On top of that, they had exercises, assignments that you will learn about now. So this was not an easy class. Again, I was just talking to a university in the United States, and what they learned here is way more than you learn in a university class in 1 semester. So well done again, team. We had 3 different modules that were rolled out incrementally. We had a piloting and commercial operations class that had a boot camp component. We also had, that was an in-person component. We had mapping and monitoring, where we started learning more advanced mapping and monitoring and spatial analysis techniques. And then, as I mentioned, the geospatial analysis and participatory information creation. And so with that, that's my overview. I'm ready for the team now to take it over. And that's it. I'm going to stop sharing, Andre. Did you want me to share, or are you guys going to take the screen over?
All right, so we'll take over.
Great. Just make sure that you guys have sharing permission. Oh, I have to stop share, right? Oh no, Andre's got it. Great.
Slide 12. F5. All right, so during the last 12 weeks, Kim would have explained the objectives and the modules that were used. So what I'm going to describe is basically some of the activities that were undertaken over the last 12 weeks. So in order to have an understanding of professional flying and commercial unmanned aerial systems operations, we would have looked at piloting, we would have looked at the DJI flight skills and protocols. We also had significant review in terms of our safety functions and emergency procedures. We would have done a number of boot camps, as well as looked at lessons learned. And we would have also looked at the roles in terms of the team roles and data management. Now, at our first boot camp, we did the introduction to the unmanned aerial systems. We had the unboxing and assembling of our drones. We learned about our flight controls. We looked at flight simulator. We also improved our knowledge in terms of our airspace rules and safety operations. And there was a recreational trust exam that was done that everyone did, and they were successful. In terms of our policy or operation, the policy and the commercial operations procedures, the policy is to promote safe, efficient, and lawful operation by the agency and partners, in the sense, the Ministry of Agriculture and affiliated partners. We looked at our national policy and protocols, commercial operating procedures, and limitations. We would have also conducted flight planning. We looked at flight planning and conduct. We looked at the safety policies. We have developed flight checklists and emergency procedures for drone operation. We also looked at how teams are structured and the roles and responsibilities for the different members of the team. In most cases, most teams are consisted of minimum 4 persons. You have your coordinator, your data manager, your pilot, your engineer, and we also have observers. We also looked at data handling, storage, and access, where most persons were involved in accessing data in terms of how do we set up filing protocols, how do we store our data, and so forth. Now, in our procedures, so for flight procedures, there were 6 critical steps that we went through to ensure that we can conduct safe flying operations. A flight request, which consisted of a plan of activities. We would have done flight feasibility and safety assessment, flight approvals, site assessment and flight planning, site assessment and conduction of flight surveys, data management, and post-processing. So these were procedures, and we would have also learned about the relevant documents associated with each of these procedures. So here are some examples of some of the documents that we developed and worked on. How do we do a drone flight request? How do we do the flight feasibility? And just to say, the drone flight request is something that most of our analysts learn, and they are now capable of doing, and it's an online procedure. One of the programs that we would have worked extensively with is Drone Deploy. Now, within the Drone Deploy program, we were able to plan flights, conduct flights, do processing and analysis of information. Now, here are some of from our flight planning and our automated surveys, there are a number of things that were possible and that were conducted. So we had video plans, we had photo plans, we had mapping surveys, and we also had 3D panoramas. And we'll be able to see a bit of, in the upcoming presentations, we'll be able to see a bit the results of some of these activities. So this is just a brief example of our flight planning parameters. So when we were conducting a flight, we were able to estimate how much time the flight would take, how much batteries we need to use for the drone, what height we are flying at, and so forth. Now, before flying, there are a number of safety procedures, which included our flight safety checklist, data sheets, and logs. Now, all of our pilots have significant experience. They have had experience in how do we do these forms and how to follow the procedure. So, as an outcome of our training, next slide. As an outcome of our training, we had 20 days of flights. We had 15 mapping missions, which consisted of 80 flights. So we looked at Montreal Gardens, the South Coast Marine Park, the South Coast Marine Conservation Area. We looked at Green Hill, we looked at Mount Wynn, we looked at Dorchester Hill, and Arnesville. In our training, we captured over 4,000 images, which we created 18 maps, 26 videos, 12 panoramas, 12 360 panoramas. The total area mapped is 1,746 hectares, which is 3,800 acres, 3,840 acres. All this was covered during our training. We did extensive work in terms of our data management, uploading, and processing. This is a very critical area. Yes, we conduct flights, but without proper data management and processing, all of our flights would have gone to naught. So some of the things that we would learn: how to download and clear memory cards, how to properly store our images, videos, data sheets in terms of our filing, how to generate filing systems, how to do naming of files accordingly so that it creates an ease of access. We also learn how to upload our imagery to Drone Deploy. And we also learn how to process our maps and our panoramas. So as a result of this, we have our mapping products and our geospatial GIS data. Now, in our second boot camp, we looked at mapping, drone mapping for agricultural disaster management. We looked at our data conversion and creation. We looked at the participatory mapping approach. We also looked at the introduction to spatial analysis and creating a sharing of information. So for example, in terms of our information sharing, we learn how to copy links, create linkages in emails to make sharing of information a whole lot easier. Results. From our drone mapping and geospatial exercise, we learn how to do our 3D elevation and plant data. We looked at the difference between the filing systems that are used for pictures, the JPEG. We learned to use Google Earth, how we download images from Google Earth, how we tag, how we capture images from the different platforms, or Google Earth, or ArcGIS, or Point Cloud, or AutoCAD, and how do we transfer these images so that we can use them in drone deploy to develop maps. So what we see is there's the map below represents the South Coast Marine Park, some of the areas that were mapped. The other area that was to the top, it looks at Green Hill. So Montreal, sorry. So we now have the ability to export various levels of resolution, and we also can do proper coordinates in terms of the different types of systems used. We also learned about the assessing of the results of our data in terms of accuracy, and we would have learned about the annotation reports. So we can now develop accuracy reports. We have now learned how to interpret these different reports. So we have now learned how to interpret the different reports generated by the drone deploy systems. And this can be used to determine if our information is good enough so that we can continue, or if we need to go and refly some of these missions. In terms of our data creation and analysis, we did some disaster risk management baseline as part of our course assessment. So we conducted baseline surveys in a number of areas. We looked at the South Coast Marine Conservation Area. We looked at Montreal Gardens, and we also did some work in Mount Twin. So in terms of our process analysis, in terms of our process analysis, we learned how to define the problems, formulate goals of analysis, create objectives to analyze or to achieve our goals, the acquisition of data, the developmental process in terms of problem solving, and the relevant implementation process needed. So during the last 12 weeks, the team was able to map over 4,300 acres in 4 or 5 different areas across the island. And this is just a start as to what we hope to. This is just the starting phase for us. So part of our presentation would be done by the Fisheries department, namely Jeremy and Sheldon. They did some extensive work in terms of the mapping of the South Coast Marine Conservation Area. So I now ask them to come forward and do a brief presentation.
Hi. Good morning again, everyone. Right? Yes, I know you can hear me loud and clear, Jeremy. Right. So our work in terms of our end product of what we went to achieve. We have a purpose, which was the assessment and the identification of a source pollution, which is land-based source pollution, right? Our solution is actually zoning of the area based on the, zoning of areas based on designation, use, and waste management section, right? What we were trying to achieve here is try to see if we can go out, get our maps, and then try to see if we can put some annotations, basically label where our land-based source pollution were coming from, right? This actually is one of the maps that we have. This is our elevation control map. So if you look closely, you will see the basic different elevations from the ground, from sea level, 0, 10, and upwards. So that was also one of our final output from that map that we got here. We also did an Indian Bay corridor map. It was 420 meters, right? This map basically just gives us, the hectares is also there. So from this map, it was more of a base map where we wanted to see how we could map our resources, our habitats in the area, right? Below, there is a small picture showing our panel view, which is actually a 3D image of the area, right? So our Villa corridor map. When you look at this map, you will see a lot of different annotations there. So what we did is from the base map that we first had, we went in and then we do our annotations where we will put some of the issues, label some of the issues that we think could have an effect on our marine habitat or our marine space, right? So we also map our seagrasses where we will have different infrastructure, whether it is jetties, and we know that it's a tourism belt, so we have a lot of hotels along that coast. So we also did that, put in the annotation for those stuff. Because we were actually looking at coastal erosion, right? We would have also put in that whole, most of that that South Coast marine area has what we call a seawall, right? So we would have labeled that seawall because we know we are having some erosion taking place there, right? So we're hoping that if we continue this thing, we can actually have maps that we could overlay them so we can actually show post and after what is happening over the period of years, right?
Okay, thank you, Sheldon. All right, so just following on from what he said, basically what we're showcasing here is also the fact that a picture really is 1,000 words. And as you can see, a lot of stuff is here. A lot of data is here. As Kim would have said, a lot of work would have been put in. And if you see all of those dots, all of these different polygons, all of them represent something, be it hotels, be it areas that persons vend, where persons would fish, just like hand line, coastal erosion, he mentioned seawalls, and also just the development. So the main thing that we'll be looking at here is just how much of this space is multi-use. There's so many stakeholders here, and this is something that has to be considered when you're doing anything with regards to disaster risk management, looking at all of your stakeholders and trying to map them. As you can see, this area is a fairly sizable area on the coast, 462 hectares, and we would have done also a panorama. So more specifics about what we would have accomplished here would also be, this is representative work of 67 minutes of flight time, taking 389 photos. Yes, it was done in a day, but we had several teams went out and flew different portions, and then we brought everything together. So this map that you're seeing here has relative accuracy. We just want to throw around of about 3.1 meters, which is fairly good. And it's, the main thing to look at here is the fact that we have these out of the box solutions that we could just go, get a drone off a shelf and return with data of this level accuracy. All right. And moving on. So this is some of the stuff that we would have done in drone deploy. And we would have, heavily utilized drone deploy to produce and manipulate the data. So this one is just showing like the elevation differences within the South Coast area, with the blue being the lower lying areas. And then you have red where you see a more steep increase in elevation where you have, your different headlands. Okay, so just talking a bit more about the data. So what we would have done, would have tried to identify the stakeholders, try to identify the different space uses in here, look at the different marine resources, the different infrastructure that is there along the coast. And then once we would have identified that, we would have then now looked at how would we best represent this data on the map. So do we want to show an area extent show the thing as a polygon? Is it okay to just put it as a point? Like, okay, this happens in this area, like people fish in this general area. That's the other stuff. So that is what we would have done. And this would have formed the basis of what we would then go out to ground truth to get more information. So who are the different persons? Okay, so we know we have vending in this area. But if we want to look at DRM and also, well, I'm fisheries, so I'm always going to go back to my fisher folk, anything happens, who are the persons affected? We could say, all right, John Brown fishes from this area. He has one boat. This is his contact information. And it's all about just scaling it up, building upon what we would have done. So we would have just gotten like different color codes so that everything is easily identifiable, so that when we go and look at the map now, when we zoom in, you could say, all right, you could easily identify that green out there, that's seagrass, that's coral reef. This brown is a part of the coastline. All right, so that's basically the background that would have fed in to this image that you have here. So you see like that green bit coming off in front of Young Island, that's a bit of reef. Some of that other green, it would be seagrass, that little shape that I can't remember what you call that, off of Rockfort there in blue, that is a beach seine area. So that is how, we want to visualize this, so that you have the data, but also it's in a way that you could easily convey this information to persons. So like, look at how quickly y'all are able to just identify these different things from what we would have done. Yeah. All right, and this is, again, kudos to Drone Deploy. Just a little picture of all the different annotations. It's 206 annotations that we would have done on the full map. And there's also this tool, the annotation summary, where once we have done all of this work, it's simply for us to just say, hey, we would like an annotation report. And this is processed, right away, and gives a printout of everything. So all the information you put in, the names, the GPS locations, everything. So all that information could be in a nice table, or if you want it as an Excel file, first, later storage, all of that is there.
All right, so from a fisheries perspective, our purpose, right, was really to identify the land-based solution of pollution, right? And that was done because it was annotated on the maps where we had some surface water and some drain outlets from those hotels and business places along that belt, that South Coast Marine Conservation Area. Access and monitoring of areas for long-term and coastal erosion. I think we had spoke earlier about the erosion taking place at the seawall at the South Coast also, right? Our benefits, like Jeremy, my colleague, said earlier, we got a more rapid assessment because the time we actually took to go out there and get all this information was, like I said, within a day, right? So we had the rapid assessment of the coastal zone pinpointing of GPS and all the point source pollution. And we also have the baseline data on beach profile structures, right? Basically give you the different terrain of the beach, if you want to call it the slope, right, that we have out there. So this information, like I said, it could be used for later on. Further when we go, we can go and redo it again, and then we could overlay it, and then we could do some we call some trend analysis so that we could get information of what is happening along the coast, right?
All right, and so just to wrap up on, coast, another thing that we have, another tool would have been the issue report. So Sheldon would have spoken about the different things that we're looking with regards to water and different point sources of pollution. And, you know, I wanted him to do that because he has extensive background in water. But the thing is, with this issue report, which is another tool from Drone Deploy, we can now just extrapolate those issues, and we could also flag them and say, hey, this one is minor, this one is critical. We could say what it is, when it's been addressed. So we could always close it. If needs be, we could leave some comments on it and what's not. So the thing is that now that we have these, we could say, all right, these are all these points along the villa, because we would have zoomed in on the villa area where we have all the hotels. These are the points that we need to now add greater focus to. So the thing would be, what is coming out at these points? Is it gray water? Is it solid waste? What's not? And then, but again, you know, we have everything there, nice and concise. And also, one of the things we would like to highlight before we come down is that this tool, Drone Deploy, is a really great tool. Is simple and powerful, and it's been amazing the amount of things that we were able to do with it, even within this short space of time, to be able to basically leverage the powers of GIS without using, you know, like real fancy GIS software, that we could be able to get these things coming out of it. Thank you.
So we have looked at fisheries. So our next part of the presentation, we focus on the agricultural aspect. So we're gonna have, the presentation is gonna be done by Sophie, Dwayne, and Shakira, and they're gonna talk about the work that we were doing in Montreal.
Okay, good day, everyone. We would have chosen Montreal because it is one of the major agriculture producing areas in Region 2. Okay, so what we did, we had 4 teams, as said before. So we flew 4 different flights, okay? We have the Macmillan, and we see that we flew at 120 meters. And you notice, as was said before by Mr. Brown, our naming convention, and this is being done so that if we have a request to ever flew over those same flights, we would have seen that we already flew Macmillan at 120. We saw that the drone that was used, we see the date that it was used. Okay, and we see here the area. We also flew Montreal at 120 also. And this is another area that was done. And from this, we can see, as Fisheries also said, that in Drone Deploy, we can do so much because there are tools that allow us these farming areas. We can zoom them up. We can outline the acreage. We can identify the farmer. We can put this in. All of this can be put in. We can put in the farmer. We can put the crop in terms of a disaster. We can go and we can count the crops and so forth. This is another area that was flew. We can also measure the length of a road. So if a farm road is to be done, we can use Drone Deploy. We can flew the area and we can use Drone Deploy and we can measure the length of the road. Here is the 4 maps that were that was combined to give us this one map, and they show a very good area. If we are to zoom it up, we would see the area clearly, and from Drone Deploy, it gave us a processing report. We have a report that shows the amount of images. From it, it showed the resolution. So from this, so the 4 combined areas give us 367 hectares, that is 907 acres. We also need to pay attention to this green here because this is showing that the pictures and everything were done correctly. The stitching was done correctly. If it was orange, it would have indicated a problem and maybe we would have need to go and do it over. Another cool feature of drone deploy, as was said by Jeremy, it is showing the elevation, the digital elevation surfaces. Also, it is showing plant health. So the red here indicate the dead areas. Okay, so if we flew an area, we could know that the area that is actually on the green, that is on the plant coverage, and the red here is areas without any crops at all. I think Dwayne would take over from here.
All right. As Sophie was explaining, we're looking at this is a 3D model of the Montreal area. If you remember the slide before, which was showing the plant health, we see a lot of brown dead areas that we would call dead areas, the brown areas, or no, red? Red. Right. So we have the red areas, the green and the yellow areas. The green areas would indicate healthy areas. If we could go to the other slide. Right. So the green areas, if we remember what was going on over there, would indicate all the healthy areas where you have a lot of greenery there. The red areas would indicate the roads and also the lands there that are cultivated, but they have no growth on them as yet. So the plant health feature of drone deploy can help us as extension, and it could help farmers to pinpoint areas on their lands without walking the lands. It could pinpoint the areas on the lands that they may be having an issue with plant health. Next. The purposes of us flying the mission at Montreal were really to create an agriculture disaster risk management base map. It was to look at the farming in the area, to identify fallow lands in the area, the average size of farm holdings, and to identify the source of water. Most of this information are information that we would have to gather while doing ground truthing after we would have flown it. Because what the map does not show is the boundaries between the farmer holding. So these are areas that these are information that we would gather when we go out to the area and speak to the farmers or to the extension personnel. Right. Metadata. Jeremy went through the metadata for South Coast Marine Area, Conservation Area already. But all I would do where this metadata is concerned is to point out that we got together and we identified the agricultural resources in the Montreal area, as shown there. We identified the resource users, the people who use the area in Montreal, and we identify what the area is used for. That's where we got our metadata from. From when we finished identifying these things, then we went through and decided what we would like to identify them on the map as, whether it's a polygon, a point, or a line. Our other mosaic data set quality review. This image on the left, it points out the amount of photos that were used, that we captured and combined to give us the full map of the Montreal area that we have. It shows the elevations. No, not the elevation, I'm sorry. It shows the data quality points on the data set. If you notice on the outside, where you have the red areas, those are the areas of the lowest quality of the map. And the blue areas are the areas that you have the highest quality pictures on the map. The picture on the right shows the annotations that we would have done to the Montreal areas, the Montreal area. It shows the different annotation that we would have put in. It shows the roads, it shows the fallow lands, it shows the cultivated lands. And also we have on there few issues that we would have identified up there. Right now, we are looking at a 3D model of the Montreal greenhouse parks. The purpose of the model is really monitoring and inspecting of remedial work on site remodeling, if that is needed. Replica digital twin of existing infrastructure. Benefits, education and awareness, generating revenue and support for nearby farmers.
Uh-oh.
All right. It's supposed to move. Right. So this 3D model gives you, it makes you feel like you are there looking at the greenhouse park physically. With this model, we could spin to show a specific area on the park, and it would give you a lifelike vision of it. Technical difficulty. It's okay. Okay. All right. It's not moving. It's all right. Move on to the next slide. Right. Where this slide is concerned, this slide is showing some issues that we would have flagged at the Mount-Win site that we would have mapped, where those white dots going around there, they're showing more or less an area of the site that looks to be having a problem with plant health. And we also identified areas where there are no vegetation, and looked at the areas to see what is the reason why there are no vegetation there, which we know that area there is really a parking lot.
Morning, everyone. We are onto the section where we see how important the drones are in land mapping and the land use for the Montreal section. The purpose of this part of the program is to identify food security planning, and we can use the drones to identify farmers holding and to identify how big the lands are in that area. Some of the benefits we can derive from drone use is to improve the MOA agricultural planning and management and increase food security through root crops and vegetable production, because we realize in Montreal, those are the two areas that the farmers focus on mainly in region 2. Next slide, please. Right, this image would show you a farmer holding that we have identified while mapping. The dotted areas tells us how big his land area is, which is about 3.2 acres of land that he has. However, The red areas within the purple area indicate fallow lands that he's not cultivating. And also we have identified him as a Dashina and Edo farmer by ground truthing with the extension aid in the area. We were able to identify several other farms, what the farmers has been planting, what they have in the ground currently. This could be a major benefit for the extension and the statistical unit. It would make it easier for the extension officers to do their work, identify where lands are, and to create issue reports on a specific farmer holding. Let's say, for example, Mr. McKenzie goes out in the field, finds an issue with an animal, he can pin that point on the farmer's holding, and we can share that information with the veterinary division, and they can see exactly where they need to go on the farmer's holding to deal with that issue directly. So this is a major help for the extension division and by far the agricultural unit. We'll now turn over to Mr. Little as he does the GIS aspect of the program.
Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What we are looking at is a combination. What we are looking at is the same image that we were looking at Montreal. Now it's in the GIS format. It is in ArcGIS, and we are saying drone deploy or the drones. When you take a mosaic image in drone deploy, you can also use it in any other software that is a mapping software, a GIS software. So this image, the same image that we just viewed in drone deploy, we are viewing it in ArcGIS, but ArcGIS gives you a little difference in terms of the tool. If you notice on the right side there, there's a box, and that shows, okay, then that we could say the highlighted area there, that is dashing. We could also say how much piece, how large that dashing area is in ArcGIS. We can also say every lot, every plot that you see in there, and we are actually plotting it by how the people actually plant the farm. So therefore, it's not just the whole entire farm, it's just the individual piece that they plant. So you could say how much production is being done there, how much land is being planted for dashing, how much is planted for eddy, how much is planted for yam. So on the farm itself, you would actually have a breakdown in terms of how much land is being used and how much is not. Next slide. Here, I have done the same thing that they have done in drone deploy, which is did all the lots, did all the areas that are not being planted. And I have put the differences, I have put names, I have put the plant, the yam, dashing, Edo, and fallow lands into my software, which is GIS. And I could actually highlight them, which will show you that the yellow areas are fallow lands. And the reddish area there, they are land that is planted, whether dashing, Edo, or whatever color. But they would have actually different colors to show you which is dashing, which is yam, which is Edo. And the blue area there is the forest. So it's the same thing that we're looking at, but it's the different software that give you a different analysis on it, or give you more in-depth analysis, while drone deploy is more maps. It could create auto mosaic maps, and it will give you a faster time of doing stuff. ArcGIS software is actually, you're putting the meat behind the matter, and you actually can do real in-depth analysis using ArcGIS compared to the drone deploy. Drone deploy will give you a right-away stuff. ArcGIS will give you it in-depth, and it will keep the data that you're using. Next. Like I said, it will also give you the acreage. It could give you it in hectare too, because if you put in the hectare file, it will give you hectares, acreage of whatever your mapping there. Okay. I think the next one, next slide. This is just an image to show how the Montreal.
No, it's over. Go back. That's for Andre to go in.
It's just to highlight how the Montreal park is actually looking from the roof side. Yeah. So thank you.
All right, so we've had presentations from the three main sectors within the ministry that uses this data. So we have looked at the fisheries aspect, we have looked at the agricultural aspect, and we have also seen the work that forestry has been doing and continues to do in terms of the processing of data. So we're gonna have a brief chat about the applications, how the policy is framed, and how do we go forward in terms of using this newly acquired skill within the ministry. Oh, sorry. So, go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Well done, guys. It was a hard journey, but well done. Huh? Yeah. Right. So with all the hard work we've done, we now realize how important drone technology is for us in terms of the work we do. And right now we have a number of projects on the ground, like the Food Insecurity Project. We have the Agriculture and Fisheries Census that's coming up next year. We have the Forestry Enhancement Project. We have Conserving Biodiversity and Reduce Land Degradation Project, Improving Vegetable Cultivation Management and Post-Harvest Handling Project, Promoting the Windward Island Food Production and Trade Corridor through National Regional Value Chain Development, and verification of existing national data collection. With the drone technology, we have learned so much in terms of data handling. I don't think we ever realized using drones other than flying up and down required so much data handling than what we have done. And I'm extremely proud of the team with where we've come from in terms of not only handling and flying the drones, but how they handled and managed the data that you could look at and analyze. Because when you look at Montreal Garden, that is when we realize how much fallow land is available that needs to be put into production. Next one. And this is where we are in terms of the heads, the drone unit, creating that structure to ensure that we could continue the good work that 8 pilots and 12 geospatial analysts have been trained to do with the support of FAO. We're proposing a director, a USA engineer, we've already determined who's the engineer, which is Andre. We've already nominated Andre. A US coordinator for pilots, which has been Koromo. The US coordinator for the data manager, myself. And there's the crew, which you have the pilot in command, the co-pilots, the engineer, and then we have the geospatial analysts who go out, who do a lot of the data collection, assist with the ground truthing, and also with the annotations and putting the maps together. It is no easy task. Don't take it for granted that the geospatial work is easy. It is a challenge. What they have to do to put in a map is just as challenging as the pilots, because the pilots themselves had to learn how to do it and also train as well, the geospatial analysts. They have done a fantastic job, but we're proposing this as the way forward to ensure that we could improve on the data collection that we're doing and the structure. So post-training, the step forwards for the team. The PS had requested that the mapping of 8 agriculture disaster risk management sites in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines. And that's going to require time and resources to ensure that we're able to do that and have the information, especially for comparative purposes, should a disaster affect us, and also for planning in terms of the agriculture, forestry, and fisheries sectors. So I am now handing over to Kim. Kim, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks. Let me do a share screen again. Okay, so in conclusion, the last week or so of the team, I always wait for the end so that we can, absorb and assimilate the data, the information, practice the skills, and go out. And actually, a big part of this class, which wasn't, you saw all the steps, but what we did not share with you, but it is available from today, is the ministry's drone UAS operational protocol and policy. And so the team has been putting that together, putting that into practice. As Debbie and team mentioned, understanding the data protocols, the workflows, the equipment, the hardware. So back to that GIS slide, the 5 main components of GIS. And so we've really carefully thought about, after we've been through all this and put, the plan into practice, and had an assessment as a team of what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses. And I'm going to close this out by recommendations for institutionalizing this. And I believe Raiza from FAO will discuss this as well. But I have to just stop and say, again, I am so proud of this team. That presentation made me smile the whole way through, because it makes me understand that you all really got it. You all really understood the goal and what I was trying to teach, and even all the data. I know it was painful, team, and I'm so proud of you. So in terms of the team did this themselves, but what are the strengths? And I think the strengths, as I just mentioned, is the team. They're very cooperative. They've worked together. They've been adaptable, and all of them have shown a very keen interest in learning new skills and technology. I have to say also, after the boot camp, which was the second one, the geospatial data, which was very intense, it even hurt my head and Roberto's head after a week. We were so deep in data, was the evals that the students that did that workshop, even on the Friday at 5 p.m. And the response on the workshop was, what do you want to learn more about? And about 2/3 of the class said GIS. Spatial analysis. They understand the data, the collection, and now they want to understand more. And as a GIS lecturer 15 years, I don't think anybody ever says that. So it really, again, just shows how far this team's come and where they see the potential for this going. So in terms of the weaknesses, this was a very intensive class. We had to do a lot of data management handling. They did not get to go out and fly enough to have extremely strong practical skills. I know the team knows how to safely operate on commercial professional standards and follow certain threat and error management procedures, but they need stick time. They need some dedicated time to fly every week. And it's just like driving a car. You don't just take your learn to drive class and you're done. You need to practice. So really dedicating the time and the staff, identifying the roles and responsibilities of this new team moving forward, and how that can be integrated in their existing workflows needs to be determined. The team also identified the need for drone insurance, in terms of we have right now insurance on the hulls, the aircrafts, but liability insurance, it's not required yet in Saint Vincent, but commercially, many places in the world, you need to have public liability insurance. Also, a weakness is additional training is needed, not just in GIS, but also advanced high precision mapping. They also received, as part of this project, an Mavic 3 multispectral, very high accuracy precision drone that has an RTK unit, which is a base station. This requires a lot more advanced training in terms of the use of this drone to make full functionality of it. In terms of hardware, there's a lot of benefits in Saint Vincent. I was amazed to come to the country and find out and free 14 drones in country. We have 14 working drones, 8 of which are mapping grade drones and 2 underwater drones. So the ministry now has inventory, registering, and licensing all these vehicles will be a priority. We have multiple iPads, 3 iPads, 3 hard drives, and some safety gear. The weaknesses was not enough, not no computers, but not enough, no dedicated computer for the drone unit. Access to transportation, data storage is probably one of our big weaknesses. There were some hard drives provided. Again, the hard drives, and I know because I procured the equipment as well, and the M3M, that new drone, is a data hog. Sometimes when we fly, it's 20 gigabytes per mission. So understanding data storage, getting additional hard drives, or even better, having access to a national server where this data can be stored and shared easily in a remote way around the country is highly recommended. the need for more stable high-speed internet. That was one maybe glitch we had, was the fact that many times some of the conference rooms that we were having class in did not have good internet. Again, luckily we had a blended format and an online academy that I could film and put up for recordings for the class to watch, and we made do. This team really was amazing. Not one day of class was ever canceled, and not one session did not happen because of technical issues. We always found a way. And I have to again thank Andre and team Andre, the AV miracle worker. Again, additional flight survey equipment has been identified, specifically a GNSS station to make full use of the RTK. And, ideally in the future, another M3M, more M3Ms. Those are high precision. Those are very good for mapping large scale areas quickly. But at this point, the team just needs practice with the 14 drones we have working. In terms of software, we have as a country, multiple 1-year mapping licenses for processing the data. All right, the team talked a lot about the ways drone deploy could be used. This requires, we just have a single use, single seat type of license at this point. If the country were to ever scale this nationally and really implement this on the way that it could really be a game changer, additional software, additional licensing would need to occur. But for right now, we've got multiple licenses for 1 year. We also have been using an app called Air Data, which is a automated flight log app. And so we're just using the free version now, but maybe an upgrade in that could be useful as well. ArcGIS Online is something that is a next step for this group. They're ready for it. All right, we learned how to integrate in and out of ArcGIS Earth, how to work with shapefiles, GeoJSONs, attribute tables, merge with Excel, etc. But continuing work and advanced training in ArcGIS Online so that they can take their analysis skills to the next level is a weakness. Cell data, it would be quite useful, not all the time, but when we're in certain off the grid situations or up in the mountains, those annotations that if they wanted to be doing them in real time with farmers, with fishers, there's going to need to be some basic cell data. Again, it's not needed to fly. Everything you saw that was done was able to be done off grid, but again, added functionality if we had it. A weakness is that these subscriptions can be quite costly, but I also must say, in terms of the gaps that they fill in the region, I find they're a very cheap solution. The gaps, I'm meaning in terms of centralized storage space. Right now, everything is being hosted. All of those probably, it's several gigabytes, or no, it's probably more than 100 gigs. Probably I'd say closer to 200 gigabytes of data already has been collected and is being stored in the cloud using the Drone Deploy account. We also have it backed up on separate drives, but there's going to be a point where, we're going to need to deal with this data besides just having it hosted in the cloud. But the other subscription benefit as well is that remote working environment, the ability to use those off-the-shelf tools one of the things the students highlighted, and I don't know if it was emphasized enough, is that all those annotations they made in Drone Deploy are easily, showed it, exported and brought in to ArcGIS Earth. So all the text they wrote, all the annotations, all the notes also gets brought into the shape files. So again, this is why I love this software so much, is that it allows non-GIS users to create geospatial data. Very quickly, you can see in a short period of time what was learned. And then in conclusion, that in terms of data and analysis, the teams are very well trained in basic skills. As I mentioned, advanced training is recommended. Particularly the strengths that the team has learned. I think we spent more than 50% of this class working on data handling, management, viewing, quality control, analysis, storage, sharing, as well as those mapping, the data creation. So data was a big part of this process. The weakness is the ability of the whole team to be able to convert and do analysis in GIS. At this point, one person is proficient in GIS. A few people can open a map, but that skill needs to be built to make the most use of this. the other identified weaknesses is now how do we, building the structures and the data protocols so that this data can be integrated with the NAMIS, the National Agricultural Database, so that the extension Excel tables can be now merged, integrated. So that sort of data management strategy needs to be further developed and planned for, and that needs to actually come very soon so that the team's efforts, can be utilized. So, team, is there anything else that you wanted to say? I think that I'm just going to conclude this, and then if there is, you guys can speak right after this. So what will enable, in conclusion, the drone team for continued success? Because in my opinion, you guys should go out and fly drones today. You guys really impressed me. And my ex-students know that that's not easy to do. So long-term technical guidance is still recommended. I was managing and supervising my drone team at Ceremy's UWI for up to 4 years after. And these are people that have master's degrees in environmental management with GIS skills. All right, so really it's a lot to learn at the beginning, and providing technical coaching and guidance and help with the internal planning, monitoring, and structuring is essential for successful implementation. The team, I know, has the skills to get out there and get going on those disaster risk management plans and base maps, but I know a little extra guidance and support, whether it's me or somebody else, is probably going to be needed or much appreciated by the team. I'm sure they can get through, but it might be more effective to have guidance. The importance, I think, I must mention, of having that blended virtual training academy, to have all the lessons be self-paced, that they can go back, rewatch, was a very positive aspect, but I can't underestimate the importance of still having, and the importance of those in-person trainings. That provided the skills and also built the partnerships to allow the remote working environment to work effectively. All right. And so the data handling, the difference between this and the last training was that the data handling and management boot camp, the participatory mapping boot camp, did not happen in Saint Vincent and St. Lucia last year. And by seeing that second week of full in-person 5 days, well, plus one extra, they got an extra one out of me, really is what brought this team to the next level. I cannot underestimate the importance of that second training boot camp, and really the focus, even though it wasn't fun in terms of data, it was critical, I think, to understanding and the skills to be applied after the fact. So like I said, that team, that whole Montreal Gardens project site, I helped coach them through South Coast. We use that as a demonstration site. I've done a lot of work in the past there, and the team 100% on their own did Montreal Gardens. All of the data planning, the metadata list, the mapping features, all of that, the team did 100% on their own with, very little input from me. So additional training, as I mentioned, particularly in the advanced multispectral drone and the RTK, GIS and analysis is needed. Also a focus more on agricultural disaster risk mapping and monitoring, that environmental monitoring approach, in general. So again, it's like these students are back at UE again, or if they never went, they're there right now. Successful implementation really is going to hinge on the country's ability and the ministry's ability to create a strategic plan for the management of the team, but also the data and the priorities for the team to support the decisions that need to be made in the country. So to align all the pieces, that strategic connection needs to happen now within country. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, if we were to scale this across the country, and again, this isn't right now, but I'm planting the seed because I know there's budgets and ministerial, but if this starts to take off, and if you really realize like St. Lucia is now going to take it to the next level, the ministry there is going to pay to create an enterprise or national system for drone deploy to integrate with GIS, etc. That requires additional software. So, I'm going to end there. I just want to say thanks again to Conroy, FAO, especially Conroy, for all the hard work in the planning and the logistics of this training workshop nationally within the country. I couldn't have done this successfully without you, Conroy, so thank you. And congratulations to my team. Riza Spencer from FAO is going to talk next, and then we will talk about any Q&A and course certificates, the graduation. Thank you. So Riza, I'm going to stop sharing and it is all you.
Thanks, Kim. Can you confirm that you're seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes. And you're seeing me? Okay. Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Riza Spencer. I'm the project coordinator for disaster risk management and resilience in Antigua. In Barbados, sorry. Could you give me 1 second, por favor? So sorry about that. My phone started to ring. So what I'm going to be presenting to you today is the next steps we have in mind for institutionalizing participatory geospatial tools and technologies for risk management in agriculture. So I was very pleased to hear that the team is interested in getting additional training and that they were very pleased with the course provided by Kim and the master's team. So of course, we're going to continue with that, continuous learning, and we've identified 3 main modules for the next set of trainings, those being coastal mapping, in which it would consist of a sub-module on the water mapping, damage assessments, and crop monitoring. The timeline we have for this training would be Q1 of 2024. We're in the process now of making the arrangements, and we know you guys just came out of a very hectic 3-month training course. So wanted to give you some time to ingrain those skills, and also to do that before we go into the next set of training. So to help with firming those skills that we've acquired, we would want you to work along with us with the CBDRM process, or the community-based disaster risk management planning process, in which the mapping by the ministry drone team would then be utilized in this process and be linked to 2 ongoing projects. Not sure I saw them mentioned in Debbie's list, but specifically the Resilient Data and Livelihoods Project, affectionately known as the JP, and the Building Resilience to Multiple Shocks and Stresses Project, known as the FMN project. And how we would do that, presently, we're finalizing the communities that would be utilized for mapping. We would then ask the drone team to go out and capture the imagery of the map, of the communities selected. I noticed as well that Debbie mentioned that there were 8 agricultural areas identified for disaster risk management mapping. So it's just to double check that, see if there's any overlap with those areas. And I also take note that the PS mentioned that we should look at the communities profiled by the CDB FAO community livelihood baseline process. And once we have these images and these maps, we started in August, the first phase of the CBDRM workshop, and we're scheduled to have another one in November, in which we go into more details and go into the communities. So we then utilize these maps to, and as you guys have rightly seen with the drone deploy, use the community members to annotate the issues, and we could also find areas to implement the disaster risk management good practices. So that is where we're looking at in the next 2 quarters of getting the drone team and activities institutionalized in agriculture. At the end, of course, the training, which I would say would start within the Q1 period of 2024, would not finish within the Q1 period, but this is the way forward for at least the next 2 quarters, and then we would reevaluate with the ministry to see how else we can integrate it. But rightfully seen in previous slides that they do have some ideas already of how they can utilize this, which we're happy for. And I just want to say, From the team, thank you and congratulations to all the persons who have been trained. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Reza. So we now go, as we're running a bit short on time. I don't know, Kim, are we still gonna do the
I was
accomplishment?
wondering, is there any burning questions from somebody in the room? Again, because we are short on time, but I know we need to do our course final presentations. I believe that we're done with our slides now.
I don't know if the PS wants to say a brief word.
Oh, the PS is there. Great.
Yes, the PS is here.
Good.
Thought we were short on time. Good afternoon, folks. I wish to congratulate you for the work well done. As the various individuals came to show their work, I noticed that the supervisors were grinning from ear to ear. Who would believe that Mr. Providence would be down there smiling his head off? It shows that you have done really good in the time allotted to you. I note with enthusiasm every morning, Debbie and a certain individual who would not be named, but we can refer to as engineer number one. Busy with this drone, this heavy thing up and down the corridor. You don't even have to ask. They're there ready and willing. So guys, you now know the significance of the work that you have done. And I am trusting that you would utilize the information that you have garnered for further work going forward. I don't anymore have to stress the significance of data collection and for it to be accurate. What I now need to say to you is that if you don't go to do the work, you can't present any more shoddy work because you have the technology, you have the know-how, you now have the equipment. So it can't be less than we have seen this morning. So if it's less than, we would know that you didn't go to do the work. We would know that you didn't go to do the work because we have seen what you can produce. So again, congratulations. And we look forward, FAO. Why the FAO people not looking at me and listening? FAO for the advanced training. We're still waiting. FAO knows that they cannot promise me anything because I would ask for it and ask for it shamelessly until we get what they promised to give to us. So for all the promises that FAO has made, I know that Mrs. Cruikshank actually took photo of all of that, and I'm expecting to get the slide, especially the one with the way forward. Because the forward one, we're looking to FAO. I see the rep on the ground not looking at me, but she's hearing me. Yes, we will have that done. So thank you again for all the hard work that you have done, to our sponsors, collaborators, the lecturers, everybody who has done a fantastic job. Congratulations and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. I just want to let you know, PS Giddens, that this is just the beginning for them. What you saw is just the tip of the iceberg. Wait till they get some more practice and skills.
So, Kim, we seeing that we have the presence of the PS, we're gonna ask her to present the certificates to the participants. So we've started Feldman Brown. Dwayne Duncan.
Wayne.
Robert Grant.
Robert. Robert always kept me on my toes.
Sophia Henry.
Our female pilot in command.
Dwayne Mackenzie.
Wayne.
Our flight engineer.
Flight engineer. Andre. Katoots.
Jeremy.
Chris. Well done, Jeremy.
It.
All right.
Pete Duncan. Debbie is going to collect on behalf of Pete. Cherry Ann. Francilia Grant.
The analysts.
Glenn Grant. The one and only Ruth Van Harper.
Ruthie.
Kiani Lewis.
All right, Kiani.
Takara London.
Miss London.
Cornelius Little.
Little.
Leon Matthews.
True dedication coming from OEA.
Deborah Danielle.
Abby. The glue of the team.
And last but not least,
Yourself. Karomo. Brown. All right.
All right, Kim. So I think it's time for your celebratory speech. If you have one.
Yeah, sure. Congrats. You did it. You survived. I just want to say again, it's been an absolute honor to work with the team, the government, FAO. Again, thank you for giving me the freedom to develop such an amazing class based on the needs of the Caribbean, of the countries, and based on all my experience working in the region. I really have had a great time, and I hope that I'm coming back to Saint Vincent very soon. Thanks to the team, again, for all the hard work. Fly safe. Don't forget the procedures. Don't get lazy or sloppy. And you know that I'll still have your back. I'll still be on the little Slack, so you can reach out to me if you need. But all the best. I hope you guys get out there, and I definitely need to hear updates. I'm going to feel a little lonely without you guys.
So as we get to the point of closing, we cannot close without a vote of thanks. And we'd now like to ask Keith to deliver our vote of thanks.
Good morning once again to everybody. President, good morning to everybody. On behalf of the participants and staff, I am glad to stand in front of you here to express our heartfelt thanks and appreciation. A special thanks to all those who made this drone training exercise a possibility. Namely, FAO, Dr. Renata Clark, FAO Sub-Regional Coordinator, Dr. Roberto Sandoval, FAO's Disaster Risk Management Specialist and Focal Point, Dr. Colleen Phillips, FAO National Correspondent, Mrs. Razor Spencer, Project Coordinator, Disaster Risk Management, Mr. Conroy Huggins for the food, National Project Coordinator, Disaster Risk Management, Mrs. Aya Wedlow Ferdinand, FAO Specialist, Miss and Dr. Kim Baldwin for a job well done. It's been a good experience. We actually like to thank the team from Drone Deploy, and of course, Ministry of Agriculture, Madam PS, Miss Williams, and all the senior agricultural officers here. Thanks for joining us today on our last our last graduation celebration. To the participants, I know that we had some long days, but we had some enjoyable ones, didn't we? Yeah. So job well done once again, guys, and thanks for everybody. Thank BNTF for allowing us the space that we are using, and French's House, and to the media, thanks. And until we meet again in PS and FAO next training, thanks, and have a good enjoyable day.
Well done.
Well, next week actual work, but next training, see you guys again. All right, thanks, and have a great day.
All right, so on that note, I would like to officially bring today's closing ceremony to an end. Thank you, everyone.